During the 7th anniversary, the Dragon Ball Legends devs have brought back team battles, where you have to pick a side, and the side that works the hardest essentially gets more rewards. Currently in the part 2, it's a battle between Son family and Vegeta clan. But in part 1, we had the choice between instant transmission and flight. But with that, they showed some interesting designs that could easily be unique gauges we could see in the future. So I thought, what if they actually were to be mechanics we see later down the line? How would they be implemented? What character would they appear on? And what would they do? So this is another one of those where I give an idea, I explain the idea, and you guys leave a comment down below at the end of the video on what you think about the idea. But of course, feel free to give your own opinions on what these images could be if they were going to be anything, because of course they could actually just never be used again. Let's get into this. Right, so between the two, I think it would be best to start with instant transmission because it's something we've actually seen in Dragon Ball Legends already. We've had 2 units that have had this in their kit. There might be another one if I'm mistaken, but these 2 come to mind straight away. There's the free-to-play Legends Road Yardrat Goku. He's actually able to do instant transmission through his green card, which is actually pretty cool, but it's at the expense of his vanish, I believe. But depending on your timing, you could really catch the enemy off guard, but I think if it was slightly tweaked to maybe not losing your vanish, it could be one of the most overpowered mechanics in Dragon Ball Legends. I was recently playing Sparking Zero, and the instant transmission is actually very useful because the enemy can no longer see you when it happens in that split moment. And in this case, when you use the instant transmission with Yardrat Goku, you're actually put beside the enemy. So have you ever been in a case where you actually chain a strike after they vanished or something, but then you're kind of hitting them in the wrong direction so you don't actually get to land the hit? It basically leaves you open. Yeah, that's what the instant transmission does. But if there was no cost from doing it, but maybe if it was limited, it would actually be super useful on a very high caliber unit. And this could be any Goku, to be honest, post Namek Saga, because obviously he didn't have instant transmission back then. But it should also go without saying, I think Vegito fits this as well, and that would pretty much be it. It'd have to be a Goku or Vegito. Gogeta did use it as well in the DBS Broly movie, but that's about it. I also should mention the green instant transmission Goku. He doesn't use it in the same way. It's more that his blue card is a counter. So once you launch anything at him, I believe it has to be an arts card, but correct me if I'm wrong. He presses the blue card, and since you've already activated an attack, the blue card will basically put him point blank, and he will hit you with his Kamehameha. It's basically unavoidable once you launch an attack. So even if he has 4 in a row, I believe he also loses his vanish once he uses instant transmission. But if he has 4 in a row, he can just keep launching them and doing good damage. In his prime, he was insane, but he's quite outdated now, and I think that should also go without saying. A Zenkai for him might go crazy, but I think it would just be a lot better if they basically build on this image here and make it a new mechanic for a new unit. So like I said, it would be a Goku, Vegito, or Gogeta. And if I'm being real, I see this being on a very busted unit. So out of those 3, it will be like rebuilding an Ultra Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. Do you guys remember when we saw Ultra Super Saiyan 2 Gohan for the first time? He had like every mechanic under the sun. The blue card counter, explosive green, the strike counter. They were just putting things together to make him OP. Endurance, he has 2 ultimates as well, and that's what I see them doing with a unit if they give them this instant transmission mechanic. It would be a side product to the fact that they're already OP, so they need other things, as this one gimmick wouldn't be enough in my opinion, even though in itself it's super valuable. It should also go without saying this would be an upgraded version, so it wouldn't work with a green card or a blue card. It would just be an instant transmission itself, so it'd be its own button, and it should be something that's limited to about 3 times in a game. It shouldn't take long to get back, so maybe every 20 timer counts, but since you only have 3, you won't be able to spam it that much. 3 is still excessive, but at least it's limited. Or maybe a better way to limit it would be that it only works once you take a certain amount of hits. So maybe you start with 1, but you can only get the second one if you actually take hits on the battlefield. So it fills in a way of a sustained damage gauge, and once it fills, you have the instant transmission ready to be used. It doesn't give you a free priority, but what it does do is put you right next to them, but you won't be losing your vanish like with the other units I mentioned. On an ultra unit, this would go absolutely crazy, and I can imagine it being a super fun unit, but I can see people complaining already. But you guys let me know what you guys think about this. I would love to see a Goku that's actually useful with this mechanic in game. Now let's refer to the flight mechanic. This is a lot more plain, especially in comparison to the instant transmission mechanic, but the first thing I thought of when trying to attach it to Dragon Ball Legends currently is the fact that we now have the ground battles with the dynamic battles upgrade. So normally normally we'd be flying in the air. Even characters that don't fly, they had jetpacks. But now characters are able to be hit to the ground, and as we know, certain characters have certain buffs when they're in the air versus on the ground. Knowing this is the case, if they actually try and capitalize off that, a flight mechanic would actually make the difference if you're able to force the battlefield into the sky. So let's just take a Goku for example. Let's specifically take God Goku from the Battle of Gods movie. Knowing Goku, he's very much wary of where he's fighting all the time, and he wouldn't want the earth to be destroyed. So in this case, him being able to fly into the sky at any moment would be in relation to his character. So if he was knocked into the ground, the mechanic will basically force him into the sky, and while he's in the sky, he will have major buffs, or at least be stronger than he was when he's on the ground. It won't be that much noticeable of a difference, but I could easily see the animation. Even if you look at his legendary finish, the way he was flying up, it looks beautiful. So off pressing this button, you can basically force yourself into the sky to have more of an advantage on the battlefield. Or you could interpret it in the reverse way. So you know with the PvP now, you can get knocked into the ground, but when it happens, this gauge will basically allow you to reverse the action. So normally if you get tackled and then knocked into the ground or quick attack, it will take you to the ground. But if that animation activates, Goku actually avoids it and he keeps you in the air. And this can happen 3 times in a game, maybe more, because it wouldn't be avoiding major damage, but especially if you're type disadvantage, getting knocked to the ground can really hurt. So he'll be keeping the advantage as he'd be in the sky, but at the same time, he could potentially avoid being knocked to the ground, so he can still have that advantage and he won't be taking the damage from being smacked into the ground. Multiple benefits, it could be either or they could both exist simultaneously with this one unique gauge. This one isn't too complicated in my opinion. It's something very simple, and in the same way I mentioned the instant transmission mechanic, I think this will be something that is stacked on top of other mechanics that already exist in the unit's kit. Otherwise the unit will be quite plain, but this is assuming, which I believe is going to be the case, ground battles is going to be a permanent thing. If I'm not mistaken, it is, but I'm just putting that in there just in case I'm wrong. They made a lot of stages for this, so I imagine it will be a permanent thing, and it's a very fun thing as well. It's changed the way PvP works. There's a lot more ways to press people, and I think with it, people need a way to avoid the immediate damage that you can take when people try to knock you to the ground in the air. And with this mechanic, I think it's one way to go about it that can easily be implemented. Now of course this is just an idea video, but I do think both of these mechanics are very realistic and not just something that I'm thinking of. It's very easy to implement these things, and I really feel like with the way they design these images, they're quite high quality and very much so look like something that could be implemented in game. If you was to ask me which one of the two are more likely to be something that we see in Dragon Ball Legends, I would easily go the instant transmission mechanic, because it's something we've already seen in Dragon Ball Legends. They just be plastering it with the idea of a unique gauge, so in a sense just branding it differently so it can fit in with modern Dragon Ball Legends. However, with the flight thing, I think using my imagination, I really had to conjure an idea that would make sense in game. But the instant transmission one, it's something we should have even got this year. Looking at the IT Goku, man, that guy is such a bum. The idea was there with the way they wanted to execute him, but it just didn't run how they thought it would have. That guy is absolutely fodder and could have been so much better if he wasn't just a perfect vanish merchant. You PV into a green card, that's all he's meant to do. He could have been so much better, man, but they really sold him in my opinion. But yeah, I do think the instant transmission mechanic is more realistic and more viable in game, and I also just think it's the better option out of the two. But can we actually pause for a moment and actually discuss the quality of these images? Like, they're really good, especially if you compare them to other gauges that we already have in game. They're a bit more detailed, but they follow the same gradient color scheme that they have with all the other gauges. For example, the evade gauge, which is the ultra instinct unit gauge, and even if we look at the others, the gradient idea is the same, but there's just less effects. So if we look at the instant transmission and the flight one, you can see there's effects to symbolize the movement of the flight and the fact that the instant transmission is going to take place. But yeah, good design from the Legends devs. I just hope they don't go to waste, because I actually think they're pretty cool. But yeah, man, that's going to be the end of the video. I really love Dragon Ball Legends because there's just so much potential they could bring out with this game. Every time they drop a new mechanic, they really stretch the bounds of what we think is possible, and now everybody starts thinking within that scope, but then they bring out something new, so now we start thinking within that scope. Before the synchro mechanic, people didn't think, oh yeah, we're gonna get a bunch of synchro mechanic units or units that could fuse. It was an idea, but we wasn't thinking that far ahead. But now with every single Fusion Warrior, it's kind of like we need that synchro mechanic. And that goes for a lot of things as well. For example, the active gauge. We've got Beast Gohan Special Beam Cannon. I'm pretty sure we're going to need a Piccolo one soon. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Make sure to press the subscribe button. We're on this grind to 200,000 subscribers. I appreciate you guys for watching, man. My name is Zakashi, guys, and I will see you guys in the next one, man.